I never thought my job would mean so much to me. For most people, an office is just a place where you sit at your desk, stare at the screen, and go home exhausted at the end of the day. But for me, it was different. My office wasn't just a workplace. It was the place where my world revolved around one person. Her name was Alexandra, though everyone called her Madam Alex. She was my boss, 35 years old, sharp-minded, professional, and so intimidating that most employees never dared to make casual conversation with her. She had that aura, the kind that made people sit straighter whenever she walked into the room. But for me, she was more than just my boss. She was the reason my heart raced a little faster every morning when I swiped my ID card at the entrance. I still remember the first time I saw her. She was in a tailored black suit, her hair tied in a neat bun, her voice steady as she gave directions in the meeting room. Everyone around me scribbled notes nervously, but I couldn't take my eyes off her. The way she carried herself, confident yet graceful, left me spellbound. There was no room for mistakes when she was around, and yet I found myself hoping to make her notice me, even if it was for a small correction or a nod of approval. I had always been good with computers. It came naturally to me since my college days when I used to spend sleepless nights teaching myself coding, breaking into small software for fun, and fixing problems my professors couldn't. That passion became my strength, and eventually, it helped me land this job. But even with my skills, in front of her, I felt like a nervous beginner. She had a way of making everyone feel like they had to do better, be sharper, and I secretly loved that about her. Our office itself was nothing extraordinary. Rows of desks with glowing monitors, the faint hum of the air conditioning, and the smell of coffee that never really left the air. But to me, the real stage was always her cabin, with its glass walls and blinds, where I sometimes caught glimpses of her working late into the night. The rest of us would be dragging ourselves out, yawning, and she would still be there, sleeves rolled up, eyes fixed on her laptop screen, a cup of coffee cooling at her side. At times, our conversations were limited to professional exchanges. Report by noon. Yes, madam. Good work on that update. Thank you, madam. Short, clipped, and to the point. But for me, every word carried weight. Every time she acknowledged me, I felt like I'd won a small battle no one else knew about. There were moments, though, when the professional mask slipped, just for a second. Once, late in the evening, most of the office had emptied out. I was still at my desk, finishing a module, when she stepped out of her cabin. Her hair was slightly loose from her bun, and she rubbed her forehead, clearly tired. She looked at me and asked softly, "Still here?" "Yes, madam. Just wrapping up some work," I replied. She gave me a faint smile. A real smile, not the sharp one she wore in meetings. "Don't overwork yourself. The company needs your brain fresh tomorrow, too." Then she walked away, leaving me staring at her retreating figure, my chest tight with emotions I couldn't name. Moments like those made it harder for me to ignore what I felt. She was untouchable, miles above me in every way, my superior, my mentor, and yet, in my heart, she was slowly becoming something more. I would catch myself staring at her during presentations, memorizing the way she moved her hands when she explained a point, the curve of her lips when she spoke, the slight raise of her eyebrow when someone said something foolish. I became an observer, quietly storing every detail like secrets I wanted to keep only for myself. At times, I wondered if anyone else saw what I did. Did the others notice the tiredness behind her strong exterior? The way she shouldered the company's weight alone, never asking for help? Did they see how beautiful she looked when the afternoon sunlight hit her office window and lit up her face? Probably not. They only saw the boss, strict, demanding, impossible to please. But I saw the woman behind that image, and little by little, my admiration for her became something deeper, something I didn't dare admit to anyone, not even to myself at first. I knew it was wrong, or at least complicated. Loving your boss, crushing on her every move. It sounded like the kind of office gossip people whispered about in lunch breaks. So I kept it hidden. I worked harder, hoping that one day she would look at me not just as an employee but as someone more. And while the days went on, my longing only grew. Every late-night shift, every accidental brush of our hands when I passed her a file, every rare smile she threw my way, all of it burned into my memory. I told myself it was enough, that just being near her, working under her, was enough. But deep down, I wanted more. I just didn't know that destiny was already preparing the moment when I would step out of the shadows of quiet admiration and straight into her heart. The morning it happened started like any other. I arrived at the office with a steaming cup of coffee in hand, my bag slung lazily over my shoulder. The sun was bright outside, the air unusually calm. Nothing hinted that this day would change everything. By mid-morning, I was at my desk, typing away on some updates when a sudden commotion rippled across the floor. Heads lifted, chairs screeched, and nervous whispers spread like fire. At first, I thought it was just another technical glitch, but then I noticed the IT staff rushing around, their faces pale, eyes wide with panic. "Server breach! The system's under attack!" someone shouted from across the room. My heart stopped. Within seconds, the office atmosphere shifted from routine to chaos. The sound of frantic typing filled the air, phones rang nonstop, and yet nobody seemed to know what to do. It was as if the ground had been pulled from beneath us. And then, her voice cut through the noise. "What's going on?" Madame Alex stormed out of her cabin, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her normally calm expression was gone. Her face was tense, her eyes fierce yet terrified. She demanded answers, but all she got were stammered excuses and technical jargon that meant nothing in the face of disaster. "Ma'am, the company's data is being siphoned out. We're losing files by the second," an IT manager finally confessed, sweat trickling down his temple. I saw her hands tremble as she grabbed his arm. "Do something. Stop it." He shook his head helplessly. "We don't know how. The breach is too advanced." In that moment, I saw something I had never seen in her before. Helplessness. She, the woman who commanded respect from everyone, who always had an answer, looked utterly lost. And something inside me snapped awake. I pushed back my chair and stood, my legs moving before my mind could catch up. "Let me try," I said, louder than I expected. All eyes turned toward me, and for a second, I felt foolish. Who was I to speak up when the whole IT team was failing? But then I saw her eyes, desperate, searching, and I knew I couldn't stay silent. "What can you do?" she asked, her voice trembling but sharp. I took a deep breath. I used to study hacking in college. I know how breaches like this work. Please, just give me access to the main server." For a moment, there was silence. The IT team exchanged doubtful looks, but Alex didn't hesitate. She stepped aside and pointed toward her cabin. "Do it. Now." My heart thundered as I slipped past her into the cabin, sliding into her leather chair in front of her system. The screen glowed angrily. Alerts, red warnings, files disappearing before my eyes. It was worse than I expected. Someone out there was siphoning everything. Employee records, financials, confidential contracts. If this went on for even 10 more minutes, the company would be ruined. I flexed my fingers over the keyboard. Old instincts rushed back. The thrill of problem-solving, the adrenaline of chasing shadows. It felt like slipping into an old skin I hadn't worn since my student days. Lines of code filled the screen as I began tracing the breach. My breathing grew shallow, my eyes darting back and forth. Whoever was behind this wasn't a beginner. They were skilled, methodical, ruthless. They had planted backdoors everywhere. But they hadn't met me yet. I typed furiously, my fingers flying, launching counterscripts, blocking ports, tracing IP trails. My mind worked faster than it ever had. Behind me, I could sense her presence. She didn't leave the room. She stood close, silent, watching, her breath uneven. The office outside was quiet now, too. Everyone waited. "Status," she finally whispered. I didn't look at her. My entire focus was on the shifting codes, the fight between me and the faceless hacker on the other end. "I'm close. They're strong, but I can outpace them." A warning flashed. The hacker had detected me. A direct challenge. My pulse spiked, but I didn't stop. I pushed harder, creating a diversion, rerouting their attack into a false directory. Within minutes, I had isolated the breach, cutting their access. Come on," I muttered under my breath, my fingers aching from the force of my typing. And then silence. The screen went calm. No more flashing warnings. No more stolen files. The data stream was cut off. I leaned back in the chair, my chest rising and falling like I'd run a marathon. "It's done," I said softly. For a moment, there was only silence. Then I heard her gasp. You stopped it." Her voice was disbelieving, but when I turned to face her, her eyes were wide with awe. The fear that had clouded her gaze earlier was gone, replaced with something else. Relief, admiration, and something I couldn't name yet. "Yes," I nodded, my voice still shaky. "We're safe. The company's safe." Her hands flew to her mouth, and I swear, for the first time since I had known her, I saw tears glistening in her eyes. She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "Do you even realize what you've just done? You saved everything." Before I could respond, she placed her hand on my shoulder. Her touch was trembling, warm, lingering. Her eyes locked onto mine, filled with gratitude and something more intense, something deeper. In that instant, the roles had shifted. She, my untouchable boss, the woman I had admired from afar, was looking at me not as an employee, not as a subordinate, but as someone who had just become her strength. And I knew nothing between us would ever be the same again. The office slowly settled back into normalcy, but for me, nothing felt the same. After the chaos of the hack, people whispered my name in awe. Colleagues who once barely noticed me now looked at me with respect. But none of that mattered compared to the way she looked at me. Madam Alex. That evening, after everyone had left, the building was unusually quiet. The hum of the air conditioning and the faint glow of the overhead lights were the only reminders that the day hadn't been just a dream. I was still at my desk, wrapping up a report, when her door opened. "Come inside," she said softly. Her voice lacked the usual sharpness, the strict authority I had grown used to. It was gentler, warmer. I stood up, trying not to show the nervous flutter in my chest, and walked into her cabin. The blinds were half drawn, letting in streaks of golden light from the setting sun. She was standing near her desk, arms crossed, but her eyes were fixed on me. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just looked, and that look alone made me shift uncomfortably because it was so unlike her. It wasn't the cold, professional gaze of a boss. It was searching, thoughtful, and almost tender. Finally, she exhaled. "I don't even know how to begin thanking you." I tried to smile, though my throat felt dry. "I just did what I could." "What you did," she said firmly, stepping closer, "was save the company. Save me. If those files had been lost, if the contracts had leaked, it would have destroyed everything I've built. Do you understand that?" Her intensity made me swallow hard. I suppose. But really, it was just instinct. I couldn't sit back and watch. She shook her head, her eyes softening again. No, it wasn't just instinct. It was brilliance. And courage. The word lingered in the air between us. Courage. No one had ever used that word for me before, and coming from her, it felt like the most precious gift. I lowered my gaze, suddenly aware of how close she was standing. The faint scent of her perfume drifted toward me, subtle but intoxicating. My fingers tingled at my sides, fighting the urge to reach out. When I looked up again, her eyes hadn't left mine. There was something there I had never seen before, an openness, a softness that stripped away the armor she always wore in the office. It made my chest tighten, made me wonder if she was seeing me not just as an employee but as something more. "You know," she said after a pause, "people respect me for my decisions, my leadership. But today I had no answers. I froze. I was helpless. And in that moment, it wasn't me who saved this company. It was you." Her words settled deep in me, warmer than any promotion, more powerful than any recognition. I forced a shaky laugh. Maybe I was just waiting for the right moment to prove myself. Her lips curved slightly, and she tilted her head. "And you did. More than I ever imagined." We stood there in silence for a beat too long. The air felt heavier, charged with something unspoken. I shifted my hand slightly, and without meaning to, my fingers brushed against hers on the edge of her desk. It was the lightest touch, accidental, but it sent a shiver racing through me. She didn't pull back. Instead, her eyes flickered down to where our hands had touched, then rose back to meet mine. The silence between us grew louder, filled with everything neither of us dared to say. I could feel my pulse in my throat, the anticipation of something changing forever. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice so quiet it was almost a confession. I nodded, unable to trust my own voice. In that moment, I knew it wasn't just gratitude in her gaze anymore. It was something softer, something warmer, something that made my heart ache with longing. And for the first time, I let myself believe maybe she saw me too. The office had grown silent. By the time evening rolled in, most of the staff had already gone home. The hallway lights dimmed to a softer glow, and the quiet hum of the air conditioning seemed louder than usual. I was still at my desk, trying to concentrate on some numbers on my screen, but my mind kept drifting back to her eyes, her words, that moment when our hands had brushed. Just when I thought I should pack up, her voice floated from the cabin. "Come inside." It wasn't her usual tone. It was softer, gentler, almost hesitant. I rose slowly, heart pounding, and pushed the glass door open. Her cabin was lit only by the lamp on her desk, casting a golden pool of light across the room. The blinds were half closed, shutting out the world. It felt like stepping into another universe, one where only she and I existed. She was standing by the window, her blazer off, her silk blouse catching the faint glow of the lamp. Her hair, normally tied tightly, had loosened, a few strands falling against her face. She looked different. Not the unshakable boss, but a woman, tired, vulnerable, breathtaking. When she turned, her eyes locked on mine. "Close the door." I obeyed, my hands trembling as I clicked the latch. The sound echoed in the quiet room, sealing us in. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She just watched me, as though searching for the right words. Then, with a shaky breath, she stepped closer. "You saved more than just the company today," she said, her voice low, laced with emotion. "You saved me." The words struck me harder than I expected. I swallowed, my throat dry. I couldn't let you lose everything. I had to try. Her lips curved, not into a smile but into something softer, something deeper. "No, you don't understand. I've always carried this company on my shoulders, always been the one others depended on. But today, when I couldn't move, when I froze, it was you who carried me. You who stood for me." She was so close now that I could feel her warmth, the faint scent of her perfume wrapping around me. My chest rose and fell rapidly, every nerve in my body alive. "Alex," I whispered, daring to use her first name for the first time. Her eyes flickered at the sound of it. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand and brushed a strand of hair away from my face. Her fingers lingered against my skin, soft, trembling. My heart hammered, so loudly I thought she could hear it. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then it happened. She leaned in, hesitating only for a fraction of a second, and pressed her lips against mine. It was soft at first, almost cautious, like a question she was afraid to ask. My eyes fluttered shut as the warmth of her lips sank into me. A rush of emotions I'd buried for months erupted all at once, desire, longing, relief. I kissed her back, gently at first, then with more certainty. Her hand cupped my cheek, pulling me closer, and I felt her trembling as much as I was. That vulnerability, that rawness, made the kiss even more intoxicating. When she finally deepened it, the passion spilled over. Our mouths moved together with a rhythm that felt inevitable, like we'd been waiting forever for this moment. Her lips were soft yet commanding, tasting faintly of coffee and something sweeter. I melted into her, my hands sliding up to her shoulders, then down to her waist. She shivered under my touch, and I realized she wasn't untouchable anymore. She was real, right here in my arms, giving herself to me. The kiss grew hungrier, filled with everything we hadn't said. I could feel the heat rising in my body, every inch of me burning where she touched. Her fingers threaded through my hair, tugging me closer, refusing to let go. I gasped softly against her lips, and she used the moment to deepen the kiss further, sending shivers down my spine. Time blurred. The world outside didn't exist, only her lips, her touch, her breath mingling with mine. It was everything I had imagined in stolen glances, every fantasy I dared to dream during late nights at my desk. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathless. She rested her forehead against mine, her eyes closed, her lips still brushing against me. "I shouldn't," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I can't stop myself." My hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "Then don't." Her eyes opened, and the look in them made my heart ache. It wasn't just desire, it was something deeper, something fragile and beautiful. She kissed me again, slower this time, softer, filled with tenderness rather than urgency. It was the kind of kiss that told me this wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It was the beginning of something real. When she finally pulled back, her thumb brushed across my lips, her expression almost dreamlike. "Do you know how long I've wanted this?" she murmured. I shook my head, still dazed. I thought I was the only one. Her smile was small, secretive, but her eyes glistened. "No, you weren't." And in that golden light, with her arms around me and her lips still lingering on mine, I knew my long-awaited moment had finally come true. The days that followed felt like something out of a secret dream, one I dared not speak aloud, yet lived through with every beat of my heart. Work went on as usual, the clatter of keyboards, the shuffle of files, the occasional ring of a phone echoing through the office. But for me, everything had changed. Every time I looked at her, my boss, my rescuer, my secret lover, there was something more in her eyes, something only I could read. In the open office, she remained the same confident, polished professional, precise in her instructions, calm under pressure, and respected by everyone around her. But behind the door of her glass cabin, in those quiet pockets of time when no one else lingered, she became something else. Softer, warmer, almost fragile in the way she let her guard down only for me. I remember the first morning after our kiss. I had barely sat at my desk when her cabin door opened, and she stepped out carrying 2 cups of coffee. It was unusual for her. She was never the one to fetch coffee herself. Yet there she was, walking toward me, a gentle smile playing on her lips that no one else in the office seemed to notice. She placed the cup on my desk and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "You'll need this today." My heart skipped, and I could barely hold back my blush as I thanked her, pretending it was nothing extraordinary. But to me, it was everything. Our romance blossomed in the shadows of professionalism. During meetings, she would occasionally glance my way, her eyes holding mine for just a heartbeat too long. In the evenings, when most employees had left, I'd find myself in her cabin, papers scattered on the desk, yet neither of us truly focused on work. We'd sit side by side, our shoulders brushing, fingers finding one another beneath the desk like 2 students in school hiding their secret from the teacher. One late night, after finishing a project together, I leaned back in exhaustion, and she reached forward to tuck a stray lock of hair behind my ear. The gesture was small, almost fleeting, but it carried a tenderness that sent warmth through me. "You work too hard," she murmured, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I couldn't resist. I took her hand in mine and kissed her knuckles gently. She smiled, and in that moment, the whole world outside her cabin seemed to fade away. Sometimes, it was as simple as sharing silence. She'd stand by the window, gazing out at the city lights, and I'd join her. Without words, she would slip her hand into mine, squeezing it softly as if to remind me that despite the busy world around us, we had carved out something special, something only ours. I noticed how she began to change with me, too. Where once she was all business, crisp instructions, sharp decisions, now there was laughter. Sometimes, while reviewing documents, she'd catch me watching her and break into a smile she never showed anyone else. Other times, she'd walk by my desk just to rest her hand lightly on my shoulder, grounding me, connecting me, reminding me silently of what we shared. There were stolen kisses, too. Quick, breathless, hidden from the eyes of the world. Once, after a long day, I lingered in her cabin, stacking files. She pulled me toward her, pressed me against the desk, and kissed me like she'd been holding it in all day. When she finally pulled back, her forehead rested against mine, and she whispered, "How do you do this to me?" I didn't have an answer, only the certainty that I felt exactly the same. Outside her office, we were 2 professionals, boss and employee. But inside, when the door closed and the blinds half drew, we were 2 souls caught in the sweet, impossible rhythm of a hidden love story. And while part of me feared the risks, the larger part of me cherished the secrecy. Every secret glance, every quiet touch, every kiss that carried the weight of all we couldn't say aloud. It was a balance, fragile yet beautiful. The world saw her as the strict, commanding leader of our company. I saw her as the woman who brought me coffee in the morning, who touched my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, who kissed me with a tenderness that made time stand still. And for me, that was enough. More than enough. It was late, the office bathed in the golden hue of the city lights spilling through the tall windows. Most of the staff had gone home, and only the faint hum of the servers broke the silence. I was gathering my things when her voice came, softer than usual. "Stay a little longer," she said, standing at the threshold of her cabin. Something in her tone told me this wasn't about work. I followed her inside, and she closed the door gently behind us. For a moment, she stood there, her back against the door, her eyes cast down. The usual firmness in her posture was gone, replaced by a weariness I had never seen. She walked over to her desk, sat down, and pressed her fingers to her temples as though trying to hold something together. I moved closer, concern tightening my chest. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She lifted her eyes to mine, and in them, I saw something raw, something vulnerable. "Do you know what it's like?" she began, her voice trembling. "To carry everything alone? To always be the one expected to have answers? To stay strong no matter what?" I sank into the chair opposite her, listening as her walls crumbled. "People see me as this confident, untouchable leader. But the truth is," her voice broke, and she pressed a hand against her lips to hold back the crack in her composure. "I've been so lonely. For years. Every success, every achievement. It feels empty when you have no one to share it with." The words pierced through me, because for the first time, I wasn't seeing her as my boss, but as a woman who carried her heart too quietly. I rose from my chair, walked to her side, and gently pulled her into my arms. She resisted for a second, pride perhaps, but then she melted into me, her head resting on my shoulder. I held her tightly, stroking her hair, whispering, "You're not alone anymore. Not with me here." Her breath hitched, and then I felt it, her tears dampening my blouse. She was crying, not in weakness, but in release, finally letting go of years of unspoken pain. I kissed her forehead softly, lingering there, hoping she felt the promise behind the touch. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. Her arms wound around me, my hands rubbing soothing circles on her back. When she finally leaned back, her eyes were glassy, her cheeks streaked with tears, but she smiled through it all. "Why do you make me feel so safe?" she whispered. I cupped her face in my hands and kissed her gently, slowly. Not the fiery passion of our earlier moments, but a tender kiss that carried reassurance, that told her she was cherished, not just desired. Her lips trembled against mine, and when I pulled back, I rested my forehead against hers. "Because I love the woman behind the strength," I murmured, "and she deserves to be cared for too." She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, as though those words stitched something back together inside her. That night, it wasn't about stolen passion or hidden glances. It was about love, pure and quiet, binding us closer than ever before. And as I held her in my arms, I realized our bond had shifted. No longer was it just attraction or admiration, it was something far deeper. A love that carried her burdens as my own, and a care that went beyond the office walls. The morning after her tears, the office felt charged with something different. I had barely settled at my desk when she called for an all-hands meeting. Everyone gathered in the open workspace, a hum of chatter filling the air. She stood at the front, composed and radiant, though I could still see the softness in her eyes. The softness she reserved only for me. Her voice was steady as she addressed the team. "We faced a serious crisis last week, a cyber attack that could have cost us everything. But we were saved because of one person's courage, skill, and dedication." Her eyes found mine, and for a second, the room around us disappeared. Today, I want to recognize her. From this day forward, she is officially promoted to lead our cybersecurity division. Applause erupted. My colleagues clapped, some even cheered, but all I could hear was the proud lilt in her voice. My heart swelled, not just because of the promotion, but because I knew what this moment meant. She wanted the world to see me, to value me the way she did. After the meeting dispersed and congratulations poured in, she called me into her cabin. The door clicked shut, and before I could even speak, she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me. Her breath was warm against my ear as she whispered, "You're not just my best employee, you're the love I didn't know I was waiting for." I froze, my chest tightening with emotion. Hearing those words from her, the woman I had admired, desired, loved silently for so long, was more than I ever imagined. I pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, and there it was. No walls, no distance, just pure, unguarded love. I cupped her face in my hands and kissed her. This kiss was different, not hesitant, not stolen, but a full, passionate surrender. Her lips moved with mine like we had been holding back years of longing. Her hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. When we finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, she rested her forehead against mine and whispered, "Promise me you'll stay by my side. Not just here, not just at work, but everywhere." Tears blurred my vision, but my smile said it all. "Always," I whispered back. In that cabin, in her arms, with her kiss still lingering on my lips, triumph and love intertwined. She wasn't just my boss anymore, she was my everything. Sometimes, when I sit back and let my thoughts wander, I can hardly believe how everything unfolded. Not long ago, I was just another employee working late nights, stealing glances at a woman I admired from afar, a woman who seemed untouchable, far above my reach. And now, she was mine and I was hers. One evening, long after everyone had left, we stayed behind in her cabin. The city lights shimmered outside, casting a soft glow through the blinds. She leaned against me on the sofa tucked into the corner, her head resting on my shoulder, her hand curled warmly around mine. There was no urgency in that moment, no fear of being caught, just the serenity of being together. We talked about everything and nothing. She laughed in a way she never did during office hours, the kind of laugh that was free, unguarded, and beautiful. I kissed her cheek, then her lips, and she sighed into me, whispering, "You've changed my life." I pulled her closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and murmured, "You've changed mine too." Our kisses that night were soft and lingering, filled not with fire, but with the sweetness of promises, promises of loyalty, care, and a love that would only grow stronger with time. Looking into her eyes, I realized something profound. I hadn't just saved the company the day I stopped that hack. I had stumbled into something far more precious. I found love. Love in the place I least expected, with the woman I had always admired, the woman who became my everything.